Hello, welcome back to my channel, and I'm here in a new location. I'm in a nondescript corner with, pink walls and a blue chair, and we're gonna be here filming for the majority of my videos. Also, I'm noticing there is some shadowing from the bun I'm wearing here, but all is good and all is fine. Today we're gonna talk about all the venues that we toured and ended up not choosing. So I'll chat you through the 3 different ones in Houston that we ended up touring and getting video from, and then kind of why we didn't pick it, and then maybe tease a tiny bit about the venue that we actually ended up choosing. And so all these footages were filmed actually back in July. I think it was like a week or 2 weeks right after the proposal, so that's like kind of first on the list, first thing that needs to be done. And so I booked those fast. And so basically we got proposed to, and then the week after I toured 2 venues, and then actually 3 venues, and then another one a couple weeks later. And at that point actually Jonathan had to go back to school, so starting back in dental school, and so he couldn't make them, so I brought my mom along. Like we said in that first video, the main vibes here are like garden-y, potential outdoors vibe, but like in general there's not many like Houston gardens, so we were kind of flexible with the idea of that. So it could have been Mediterranean inspired, it could have just been like more like greenery area, like, or even just a more normal venue but with an outdoor space. So we were kind of open to interpretation. Obviously we're not paying for people to go to Italy, so like beautiful luscious gardens are not reality for Houston, so we did what we could. And so the venues that we ended up picking to tour is Lott Hall, the Centennial Gardens, as well as Briscoe Manor. Lott Hall was more of like this Mediterranean inspired like clubhouse vibe, so it had like white walls and like these like red shingles, like it was giving very like Italy-ish, and the inside of it is kind of interesting because it was a like clubhouse that was renovated. There were multiple rooms inside, which had its pros and cons. So the 2 biggest rooms that people normally put receptions in, one held 90 guests and the other held 75. And because we're aiming for like a 120, 130 guest count, our guests would have been split between the 2, and we couldn't really think of like how to move people around in those different rooms in order for it to be like less chaotic. Like, are people not going to hear speeches on one side, and then on the other side like there's dinner happening without the other room knowing? I don't know, it just felt a bit interesting. The outside area was really nice, like it was pretty big and open. They said it sat 100 to 150, so plenty of space outside. The only odd part about using their outside space is that it didn't feel very garden-y. It felt more like a park, like a literal public park, which is like pros and cons, right? A park is not entirely the vibe, but that would mean we'd have to like add in more on like decor and like build it out and make it a bit more interesting to look at. And so that was just like a consideration for us. Like there's literally a park bench in the middle of like that backyard space, and so that was just one thing that we had to consider. It was very like not super interesting to look at, more like a big lawn. But there was enough space, so that was kind of cool and interesting. And they had plenty of bathroom areas, like a bridal suite, like a large kitchen and things like that, so plenty of amenities. There's some required vendors, which was food and beverage. And then my personal notes for that is that it had kind of like poor and dim lighting inside the clubhouse. It had more like a moody, darker vibe. And when we visited, they didn't want to turn on the AC because we were just like visiting, and it takes like, I guess, a lot of effort for them to cool the whole clubhouse during the summer months. And so we were just there breathing in hot air. It felt like I was like walking around in an oven. And so I don't know, all that combined, it didn't feel like a good experience for us to want to have our wedding there. And mainly the split of the rooms made it tricky, because like I can't really imagine us being in one room with a guest and the other guest will just feel like overflow, unless we had everyone outside, of course. But just thinking about like rain plan, backup plan, like it was kind of odd. There is like no central place for things, especially inside. So for Lott Hall, while we liked the vibe and it was one of the top choices, it's really pretty too. Also, there's tons of weddings on like Instagram and stuff like that look beautiful there. But I don't think it just hit the mark for us. It was okay, it was fine. So we'll put that one at the middle. And in terms of pricing, I think this one was actually, let me think. I think all of these actually were around similar prices. It just came with different packages, so it's a little harder to compare. So let's just call it like mid-tier in terms of like aesthetics and like what we wanted, and also like mid-tier in terms of like pricing compared to the others as well. And then for the next one, so that was Centennial Gardens, so it's under the same company as Lott Hall, so the same rules apply. This one was so interesting because they have like this they have tons of garden spaces, right? But they're all priced differently. There was like this massive lawn, but that cost the most, and I felt like that was like a gigantic space, more for like a party of 300, not necessarily a party for around 100. And so there was a more smaller garden, and if you were to pick that smaller garden, which we were interested in, you do not get any amenities. You're completely on your own. They even said that your guests would have to use the public bathrooms on the opposite side of the entire like gigantic garden space, so like they would have to walk across. I have no sense of distance, but like maybe like 7 stone throws away in heels to like a public park bathroom, which are never that great, and always kind of like dirty and dingy. So we were like, interesting. They had like an on-site kitchen and like chairs and tables and all that stuff, but they said if we happen to pick that garden, we get none of that. So it's kind of interesting. I don't even know how you would do catering there, because if we have like catering come in, they can't use that kitchen. They'd have to set up their own tents outside in like the parking lot. And that just did not make sense logistically. They said a lot of people combine that small garden space with like this like indoor modern-y indoor space. But the thing with that is like it would cost extra to rent both of them. And yes, if we also get that indoor space, we get the kitchen, we get the chairs and the rentals, and obviously a rain plan if it does rain. But yeah, we weren't super enthused with the indoor space because it felt very like museum classroom vibe. Like it was super empty. It was super like plain walls and like very, very hyper modern, that we felt like it didn't really go with our vibe well. And if we wanted it, then we'd have to like over decorate yet again to make sure that it all fit together. And so that was definitely something to consider as well. And then the crazy thing about this venue is because they treat that massive lawn, that tiny corner garden, and then that indoor space as 3 separate venues, they said there is a chance there could be 3 weddings happening at the exact same time. So like imagine guests they're walking around and they can't even tell like what wedding they're a part of. And so they also said that if our guests were in that like smaller garden, if they were to like walk outside or hover, they're not allowed to like hover on a certain section of the concrete patio, because that like interferes into like the section of the indoor space that someone else has booked. So it was very odd. They're like, you can like take photos here and here, but you can't take photos on the main lawn because someone else booked the main lawn. So it just felt like very weird and territorial. But I was sad about that because the space is beautiful. Like those gardens, I've been there a couple times and it's so nice. Not only does they have like plenty of parking, like things are in one space except for the public bathrooms that are like all the way on one side, but like the gardens are like obviously gardens. They have like a whole rose garden area and like this big like giant I don't know what to call it. Maybe I'll show you a photo, but like a giant lump of grass, like a mound that you can walk up, which is interesting. I don't know how I feel about that. I've seen it in photos and it's like kind of nice, but then I'm like, it kind of looks like just a massive weird looking hill in the back. So yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, the other small gardens that they have that are not venues, right? You could take photos there and those were really beautiful as well. But yeah, because of all those reasons, we did not like this one that much at all. And also it was for a very short amount of hours. I believe it was like only 4 hours. So we'd either have to split our wedding into like a actual ceremony and then an actual reception. And we couldn't do that in one place, or we just have to have like a rush wedding, like super quickly and have it all in 4 hours. So that's why the Centennial Gardens, even though lovely, we definitely did not want to book. So that was probably bottom of our list. And then, so the third one is Briscoe Manor. And so I do have a lot of content on this one. This venue actually is one that Jonathan's sister actually had her wedding just a couple years ago there. And so I've like seen it up close, like as a guest, and it's really nice. It definitely has more of like a ranch vibe. We mainly just like did not want barn. That was like our main key criteria in terms of like venue vibes. Like it's Texas, right? So like everything's barn. So like we didn't mind ballrooms necessarily, but just something that wasn't like aggressively Texan. And so this one we liked because it was more like modern inside and like less barny, but of course compared to the others it is like more of a barn vibe. So this one had like plenty of parking. It actually was a bit like farther out, so it was on like it's deep in Richmond, Texas, so like small town roads and kind of far in terms of distance for people that are central to Houston. The venue space itself is massive. They actually have a mini venue like near the same grounds. They said they sometimes have like birthday parties and like you can host your reception dinner there, but they'll never have like two weddings at the same time. And so they had plenty of options in terms of space there. A huge bridal suite, like baby outdoor areas, like a tiny little garden space, and then this almost like this like turf area for cocktail hours, so that brought in that like outdoor garden-y feel that we were looking for. And then inside the main reception area is this like ballroom, but generally they host like 300 people there, and so we felt like 100 people would have been kind of empty unless we like played it well with the arrangement of the seating. But it looked really nice. I mean, obviously very new, very modern, and they come with a lot of things. So like you can get chairs, tables, linens, like I think it came with like tableware settings as well. So it came with a lot of things. And because we like toured during the summer, which I definitely recommend, it's off season for weddings. They had like so many discounts. They were telling us like, oh, if we book today, like they'll throw in like an extra like event rental, or like they'll I think they said they'd take off a couple like $100 or something if we book in that month, something like that. So definitely recommend touring during the summertime. But yeah, it was like really nice to see. You do have to do catering through them. They have their own in-house caterers. And when I ate at my like Jonathan's sister's wedding, the food was so good. Like my steak was amazing. Like I could not believe it was like wedding food. So like the food is iconic there. So definitely like worth the price, but you have to like incorporate that into your package for sure, that and the bar. And so when we were tabulating things like this one, if we booked on a Sunday or Friday, it would have been more like economic versus the Saturday that cost way more. But like we still have to add on the catering package, right? And the bartending package, where while it could have been easier to like just go ahead and purchase that, there's a chance we could get cheaper if we go off on our own venue and kind of like build out the vendors that we want. That was something to think about. And then also like while we really liked it, and it was so massive, tons of different spaces, you can use them all however you like, we felt like it was just so far from like the main point of like our vision, which is garden, right? Like it was more like ranch. And even I'll show a photo if I have one. That mini barn area that they have has a massive Texas flag on the side of it, which is just like so aggressive. But it was like more Texas-y, right? Like nobody's thinking Bridgerton there, no one's thinking Italy there. And so we said like if we were to choose it, like obviously it's easy to have this more like inclusive venue, but like at what cost? Because it's not necessarily the vision that we wanted. We'd have to build it out a lot on decor if we do want to get that garden feel. Now understanding those three venues, out of them, Briscoe Manor was like, I mean, I guess it didn't have as many like issues as the other two, so we would rank it as our like first choice of the three. But when we went to the venue that we ended up choosing, that one checked off like all the boxes, so we ended up obviously picking that one. And I can tease a bit more. So there are even more like gardeny and like Mediterranean-y and like outdoorsy kind of venues in Houston. I could probably think of like 3 off the top of my head right now. But the one that we ended up picking definitely has a strong garden vibe, and we wanted a place with a rain plan as well. So obviously we need some sort of building just in case outdoors is not going to happen, and that checked off the box. And then we ended up picking this one because it's so strong on like the garden vibe. We felt like we could spend less in decor and like florals and just like building out that vision because it already looked so nice, and that was a plus there. It is a bit smaller, and definitely small compared to Briscoe Manor, which is freaking massive. I don't know acres, like I have no sense of acres, but like many acres. And the venue that we're on, I would probably say not even 1 acre. So the venue that we ended up choosing is also Central Houston, which is good. I do not live in Central Houston, but it's easy to get to. And I think very central and local for all our guests who, like we said before, like majority of our friends and family live in Houston, so it's pretty easy to get there. And then in terms of getting there from the airport is also a lot easier than if it were in, say, Briscoe Manor, which is on the opposite side of where the airport is. And so all those boxes kind of checked off, and so we ended up going with that venue, and like I toured it and I literally loved it. And I was like texting Jonathan, I was like, no, we need to choose this place, like everything's great. He ended up coming with me to tour later in December, and so he got to see it himself, and he definitely approved, obviously. And then we kind of, after deliberating, we spent a week or so just thinking about what date that we wanted to pick. I said earlier that we were hoping for spring, but obviously an 8-month engagement was just fast, and thank God we didn't pick that. And so we ended up picking like fall winter vibe instead. And I will say, look in the Farmer's Almanac and look up all like the sunset sunrise charts and do your due diligence, and kind of like pick a date that you think has the best like chance for weather for you, for good weather. And we ended up choosing a date, and we chose a venue, and that all happened, I think, within a month of being engaged. And so was super happy to cross that off the list. And I know that my last video was very dated because I had so much like trouble just wanting to edit it after so long. And luckily, of course, it's done, it's edited, it's up. And so I will now update you on the current progress as of, what is today's date? As of the end of April of 2024. So as of now, Almost everything is booked up. I think we got all our major vendors. So we had, since that other video, I did find my wedding dress on the first shopping day, which was insane. So we do have that footage, and that is to come as well. We also got a DJ, florist, and bartender and caterer. It took forever, my god. Yeah, these, I think because people own small businesses, they just like don't have that business mindset. They're more like, I'm a chef, or like, you know, I like doing this, I like doing that. Some of them I feel like don't understand like email correspondence and like how to reply back on time. Okay, I'm re-recording this section just because I feel like I downplayed how annoying vendors are with like their websites. First of all, they do not put prices on there. Like, I don't understand. You know how much you want to be paid. I know how much I have to pay you. Like, why can't we just like work things out? Like, why would I bother you if I do not have the funds? Like, it makes no sense. Like, how embarrassing for both of us, right? Like, we literally reached out to this photographer and they didn't have their prices on their website. And of course, they literally shot for Vogue, so we were, you know, shooting our shot there. And they literally came back and said that their cheapest package, I think, was $8,000, and then the second tier was $12,000, and the top tier was $20,000. Like, ma'am, it like just put this on your website, like a starting point, a range, like an average, something of some sort, because people are not like planning weddings blank check. Like, there is some form of a budget there, and that's the first criteria. And maybe this is just like my business school brain talking, but like that is the dumbest thing ever. And then the fact that we have to like sit and fill out these forms, some of them like ask you like, how did you meet, and like, when did you know he was the one, and like, what are 3 adjectives to describe how you want to feel? Like, my god. I understand you're like trying to be friends with me to do like a salesy thing, but like, please, I just want to know your prices. Send me your packet. Like, I know you have a packet, just send me the packet. Like, why are we doing this thing? Because like, why am I telling you my whole life and my whole business, and like you're not gonna be in my budget, or like you're not even available for my date? Like, what are we doing here? And I get it, like, you can obviously call them, and maybe it's like the Gen Z / millennial me. I do not want to make a phone call. Like, if you have a literal form on your website directing inquiries, I'm gonna fill it out. Like, that's the point of the form. And so I don't understand how these forms are like not attached to their email, like they're not getting notifications. And so like, we'd send all these forms. We'd also send up follow-up emails. I think we did 3 follow-up emails for each one, and they still would not reply. And it was just like baffling, because I'm like, do you not want income? Like, I have money here for you to save your business this month if you would like, but like, that's cool, you don't want it. And like, you know, where are we going with this? If you have it on your website, literally, why do you put a form on your website if you're not going to reply to it? And why do you add your email if you don't want customers to email you? And why do you have a business if you don't want paying customers? Like, yeah. Anyways, I do feel a lot better. So, some advice in booking vendors. A lot of them I got through Instagram, which I think was a really helpful way. Of course, there's some that like look legit on Instagram that aren't legit online, so you have to like back it up by obviously checking their website out and looking at Google reviews, things like that. But I do think like starting with like some local wedding magazines, seeing like what vendors keep popping up and around, and then you kind of start to get a feel of like who's doing a good job and like who's invited to like a lot of weddings, and like who has a good portfolio. And then from there, kind of click around and look at the things that they're tagged in to see other weddings and what other vendors that they used for different things, whether it's like caterer or rentals, or, you know, all of the above. So yeah, definitely helpful, but yeah, I don't know. It was just rough. So that was definitely the most annoying, but those are done and squared away. So catering, bar, and then we just signed off on rentals, and then a couple of other things checked off the box as well. But yeah, we have small things to go, like tiny decor stuff and like officiant and a little bit of everything else. But yeah, for the most part, we are basically done planning, and now we're in the I guess the war zone of the last 6 months, and now we're starting to plan like bachelorette parties, bachelor and bachelorette parties, and go from there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had an interesting time hearing about Houston venues and kind of how we ended up choosing ours. But yeah, enjoy and see you in the next video.